he asked me, when you spent all that time in Traverse, did you check out High Pointe this summer? And I said, you know, I'd heard guys talk about it, but I never played it. And he said, no, you can't play it. It was Tom Doak's first golf course. It went down more than a decade ago, but I heard that he was on some podcast talking about bringing it back. We had our first conversation. I remember saying to Tom, you know, are you really interested in bringing High Pointe back? Was that podcast on target? And, you know, Tom's brutally honest. And Tom said to me, well, you know, it's been a year to year and a half since that podcast aired. You're the third or fourth person that's called me since. I don't want to get my hopes up. And I wound up just saying to him, I'll take a swing at the land. We'll try to figure out, you know, if this is even possible. And if I make some progress on the land, then, you know, let's talk again. And that's just how it all started.
Hello.
We're at High Pointe Golf Club, Tom Doak's first ever solo design, and we're excited to bring it back to life. When I embarked on the journey, it was about having a love of the game and wanting to have a great course in this area that I'd quickly fallen in love with. And I think it's evolved into something much more than that. It's evolved into a labor of love of the greatest game, but doing something special with the game's greatest living architect in the town he calls home, and then bringing something that is going to be this tremendous to northern Michigan. Golf drives everything at High Pointe, so I wanted to make sure that we weren't compromising the routing and all by picking this spot. So we're standing here having that conversation. We wanted to do something from a logo perspective. So we inherited a name, and then the idea of, we tried to come up with all these different ideas that we could build a concept around. But, you know, when Tom talks about designing a golf course, he doesn't talk about creating holes. He talks about finding them. And when we look back at this iconic photo that was snapped, I feel like we've found our logo, and we've found, you know, a story that we can tell that has significance. And then we added the start to it, because at High Pointe, we just have a simple objective. We want High Pointe to be the High Point of golf. You can just imagine, after a round of golf, sitting up here on a patio, enjoying your favorite beverage, looking out over the valley of golf, taking in one of those magnificent Michigan sunsets. Really, when I thought about, you know, the type of person I wanted to take care of this masterpiece and to be able to deliver the conditions that we're looking for at High Pointe, you know, in my time playing in the member guest at Kingsley Club, and just being there as a guest from time to time, the conditions are always fantastic. And I knew that Dan was involved in building it, and I knew that he had been there since inception. And that's really what I was looking for. I was looking for somebody that could build it with me, and somebody that could give me 20 years or so and deliver firm and fast superlative playing conditions. So I said, you know, I'm really kind of looking for the next Dan Lucas. Maybe I should ask Dan Lucas who I should pursue. I said, hey, I got an interesting development today. I think I might have our superintendent. He said, oh yeah, who's that? I said, I think I can get Dan Lucas. He said, whoa. He said, well, if you can get him, we got to get him. And I knew he was the right guy. I was excited to get him. Nobody does firm and fast like Dan. And not only was he really good at his job, but he's a hell of a human being. Just a wonderful gentleman, and great leader, and just blessed to have, you know, him on this team.
We haven't even been together that much. I've been out front just racing as fast as I could to get 18 greens built so he could get them all seeded. It's like I've barely seen him since June.
Yeah, it really has been.
I mean, for me, in the middle of these two guys, it's like an all-star team, right? I mean, we got the game's greatest living architect, and And this guy, I call him the commander.
You know, I was thinking, when we did this the first time, Tom Mead was the superintendent who helped me. And, you know, Tom had been at Crystal Downs for a while and he was ready to do something different. And this just came along at the perfect time for him. And it was Tom's idea to put fescue out here. I mean, he and I started talking about it, and I'd spent a bunch of time in the UK and thought, why didn't anybody do that up here? And Tom said, you know, back then Crystal Downs had like one row of irrigation down the middle, and the edges of the fairways where it didn't get much water was fescue. You know, he wasn't trying to grow it. It just, that's what survived that. So I started talking to people around here about, yeah, we're going to do fescue fairways, and everybody in the turf business is like, no, that's crazy. You're out of your minds. What are you doing? And the only guy who would talk to us was a young superintendent at Kalkaska, and that was Dan. So I met Dan in 1987 because he's the only one who besides us, who thought that fescue had any future up here at all. Dan came in behind us a few years later at Kingsley and showed what it could be like if it was really good. And a lot of places have put it in since, including, you know, all the courses at Bandon, which I've been a part of some of them, and all the courses at Sand Valley, and half the courses in the Sandhills in Nebraska, and a few other ones besides. So you look at the list now, and like the top 10 modern golf courses, I think there's like 6 of them that are fescue.
Even when I was growing bent grass at a couple other courses I was at, my philosophy was always to keep it as dry and as thatch-free and as lean as possible, yet still dealing with the traffic. So, I mean, all of that translates perfectly to fescue. And fescue allows you to take it even further. You can't plant fescue and experiment with it and not have a guy that knows what he's doing coming in there. You have to commit to the philosophy, but the ownership also has to commit too. They have to commit to not worrying if there's brown spots out there, and not having to have a perfect green sword of grass out there and jumping on the superintendent as soon as there's a rough spot. So the ownership at Kingsley was committed, and everybody was 100% in, and that's what made it work. I've always loved going through the construction process and having that kind of input into the golf course that I'm going to be maintaining. The opportunity to do that again was just too much to turn down. I've always had a lot of admiration for superintendents that work in the private industry, that are in a rotating green committee and board environment. I've always told people that if I had one guy to make happy, I can figure out a way to do it. And I've been lucky enough to work for single owners basically my whole career. I have a lot of admiration for those guys that have to deal with a change in leadership regularly. And I've been extremely lucky with the owners that I've been involved with and the projects that I've been involved with, and the other leadership that I've been able to work with to do them.
Well, this is kind of the old golf course, or the parts that are left of it. A couple of the hole numbers, there's 6 holes from the original golf course that are still pretty much intact in this course. The old 10th and 11th had to be renumbered, so they're 8 and 9 now. We're on 9T. And then there's 2 new holes to the south, 10, 11, and then 12 through 15, which kind of play back and forth here. We managed to keep the same numbers for the holes, which is good because people remember those holes pretty fondly from the old golf course. And if we're talking about the new course and they're talking about the 14th, and it's not the 14th anymore, it's confusing. Well, the first time I came out here and looked at this, I was 25 years old, and we got to about right here and looked over this ground, and it was just, it was ferns and native grasses and little pine trees that they planted for erosion control. And I just thought, the front 9 was mostly a cherry farm back then, but the back 9 had not ever been cultivated, and there was still a lot of natural material back here. And it reminded me of things I'd seen in the UK, especially around London. heathland courses. None of this is really heather like the ground cover that grows in the UK, but the rest of it felt the same in terms of the texture of the ground and the kind of undulations you see on those golf courses. So these were the holes that I was always the most excited about getting to build the first time around. So that's when I started thinking, yeah, maybe this thing can come back again. And these 6 holes that were kind of the heart of the golf course in the first place were the ones that hadn't been messed up. And you know, they were going to be pretty easy to restore. You know, on my own, I was thinking, oh, maybe there's 9 holes back there. But when Rod called me the first time, I knew that, you know, when we were building High Pointe the first time, the Haydens bought the land to the east where the new 9 is. 160 acres going that way to the next road over. And they asked me to look at it and see if maybe if this was successful, they could build a third 9 over there. And they never did anything with that. The only thing they ever did was put a driving range on it. But I still remember that routing. In fact, I still had a copy of it somewhere, amazingly. So, you know, when Rod called about it, I said, well, we could try to restore the original golf course, but they really tore up 9 of the holes. It was hard to watch. You know, it's funny that I've actually talked to a few other architects, and a lot of times they've had similar experiences. You know, the first client to give you a chance to do something new, you're always grateful to them, but probably they don't know too much about the golf business, or they would have hired somebody with more experience. So it's pretty common that we watch them struggle after they get the thing done. They don't really know anything about operating a golf course. And I really struggled personally. I mean, I was very attached to this. I didn't just design it. I was on a bulldozer building every green here. It was really hard to let go. You know, we didn't have that great of a relationship after a while. And, you know, I was just kind of, I'd still come out and play golf some, but I just got to the point I couldn't say anything to him. And so when it finally went under, I was hoping they would find a buyer for it to preserve it and fix it up. And, you know, Mr. Hayden died just before the recession in 2008. So there were no buyers waving money around at that point, and nobody picked it up. So it closed, and you know, that would have been a lot harder if I hadn't built some other really good golf courses by then. But as it was like, well, you know, I've got some really good courses to my credit, so this is hard, but, you know, when you're an architect, really the fun is in building the golf course and getting to play it when it's brand new. And after that, it's not yours anymore. And it's a tough lesson to learn and understand, but, you know, once you've gone through it a couple of times, it's like, oh yeah, I'm having fun doing what I'm doing. I hope it works out. I came up when I was in college. I grew up on the East Coast, and I came up when I was in college to see Crystal Downs, which then wasn't very well known, and got to be pretty good friends with the pro, Fred Muller. And, you know, it was Doug Grove, who was the pro at Grand Traverse Resort, who knew the Haydens, and he called Fred asking for advice on finding a younger architect to help build something here, because they weren't going to pay a big name designer. And I'd just been back to Crystal Downs, and Fred said, yeah, I know just the guy, when I was really young. But, you know, that was a great opportunity for me, and, you know, a way to start putting my name out there a lot earlier, because it takes a long time. You know, most people don't know a lot about what I did before I built Pacific Dunes, when I was suddenly an overnight success at the age of 40, and I've been working in the business for 20 years. That's just the way it works. Almost nothing. I mean, yeah, we've changed the bunkers a little bit on the old holes, but the greens are still pretty much the same greens. We had to core them out and put new mix in, but we kept the contours mostly the same. There was 1 or 2 we softened a little bit because greens weren't running at 12 in 1987 when I built this the first time. We did some more work on the bunkers because, you know, I had worked for Pete Dye before I tried to do this on my own, and I knew I didn't want to, you know, he always built bunkers that were just flat sand in the bottom and a grass face. And I knew I didn't want to do that, but I hadn't invented a style of my own yet. So I was just kind of experimenting, doing different stuff. And it was different, but the bunkers weren't the best part of the golf course by any means. So, now I've had 30 years to practice building bunkers, and I've got a lot of guys who are really good at it. So I let them help build better bunkers this time around. I've been very reserved about my emotions about this time because the first time was really hard. And it's like, let's not be too emotional about this time. But, I think that'll change when I get to come back out and start playing golf again. I mean, that's what we all do this for. For a long time here, I haven't had one of my golf courses close enough to home to just decide to go out and play in the afternoon. Yeah, this was kind of the surprise for me. I mean, when we built the golf course the first time, they only owned to right here behind the green. And there was just a wall of pine trees. And I actually thought that was state land. I didn't know what was back there or who owned it or anything, but it was all woods. I knew we had 9 holes on the new ground, and I knew we had 6 holes from the old course and maybe part of the old 18th hole, but I didn't exactly know where the other 2 holes were coming from. And then when I got a map of it, I'm like, oh, there's more ground to the south? When did they get that? But that let us build these new 10th and 11th holes, 2 pretty good par 4s that slip right into the old back 9.
Wait, so you haven't made any mistakes, right?
Not this time. Only last time.
Yeah, that's the first lesson. You're going to screw it up. There's going to be mistakes made, and the key is in recovering from those. But I learned a lot building the Kingsley Club because I had never been in the basically general contractor position before. When I met with Ed Walker and accepted the job, he said, well, you're going to take care of all of this, aren't you? And I said, well, I've never done anything like that, as far as dealing with contractors and organizing equipment. And he said, well, neither have I, and I'm too busy, so you're it. So I made more mistakes there. I think I learned a lot, and I think I've been much more efficient building this place, but that's all thanks to going through it at Kingsley. The biggest challenge probably was the irrigation system as a whole, but more focused on the pump house, because our new pump skid will get delivered in November. In the middle of putting this brand new, shiny, top-of-the-line Rainbird irrigation system in, we had to hook it up to a 1985 pump house with controls and clay valves and things that had not been run to any real extent since 2008. We had to resurrect a 1985 pump station that had been basically unmaintained for 15 years. It's been a huge part of what I do on an almost daily basis, is checking in the pump house and making sure things are running the way they're supposed to. And we're on a pretty good stretch right now. I don't think I've had to mess with anything in there for a week or two. So as it's run longer, it's run better. So yeah, the old 3-pump system with a jockey pump and 250s, but it was unique because they had 2 different basically watering systems. The front 9 was all below the pump house, so they ran a lower pressure down there. They have 2 outlet pipes coming out. One was running at a lower pressure going down because everything on the front 9 was downhill, and everything on the back 9 was uphill. So they got a 12-inch outlet pipe and a 6-inch outlet pipe coming out of here, and this was top of the line back in 1987, but a little bit left to be desired in today's standards.
Actually, there's some deja vu here. I mean, when we built the golf course the first time, Acme Township was slow with the zoning permits, so we thought we were going to build first thing in the spring, and we had really nice weather first thing in the spring, but we couldn't start building the golf course till Memorial Day because we didn't have a zoning permit. So we weren't going to get everything finished that year. We built most of this back 9 the first year, and we had a lot shaped on the front 9, but we threw some seed out in the fall and just hoped for the best. And this time I was like, okay, we can't do that. We got to hit the ground running the 1st of April, but again, we didn't have zoning permission until Christmas. We didn't have Dan on board until February or March. So we, once again, April came and we could build, but we were just starting flat-footed. Yeah. And, it's hard enough to build a new golf course in 6 months if you're really organized and ready to if you've got a whole bunch of equipment lined up day one. We didn't have that. So it's been a rush to get everything going. And, I'm a little more spread out than I used to be too. Some of my other associates were working on other projects for me. So it's basically Brian Slonick and me building this golf course. And then the other thing, the first time I really shaped all the greens myself. I haven't done that in 30 years because, occasionally I'll get on the bulldozer and build a green, but these other guys they do that full time. They're much better at it, much quicker at it than me. So it's kind of silly for me to be on the bulldozer with somebody that much better standing right there. In this case, both because we're spread thin and because everybody knew my history here, all the guys that work for me are like, oh yeah, you should build all the greens again yourself. You should. And I kind of wanted to, but it was also pressure because I'm not, I'm going back to something I'm not really that good at anymore and trying to get good at it again, And, I had Brian as backup, but, while he was working on these old holes and getting them cleaned up, I just started building the other greens, these two right here first. And, just trying to stay in front of him. And instead, I just figured instead of trying to get it down to the last inch or two, I'll just get a good rough version in, and then it'll only take him a day to clean it up for me when it's time. And that worked pretty well. So I actually did do the first version of all 18 greens here again, which surprised the hell out of me. But it's my wife didn't see as much of me this summer as normal because the days I was home and not working on other projects, I was here instead.
It's my first grow-in. It's my first golf course project. But when you have a team like this on each side of you, it certainly makes it easy. I have a background. My businesses were startups, so I'm used to starting from scratch. I knew a lot more about golf when I started this project than I did about employee benefits and technology when I started that company, and that one turned out all right. But to surround yourself with, two guys that are as good as these two are at what they do, and the whole team brings a tremendous amount of skill. But what I think is equally important is they bring a tremendous amount of passion. Everybody that works on this team is really excited to be a part of this project. They understand its importance. And I've seen guys grind away and work long days and work 7 days a week. And they do it smiling. And they thank me for the opportunity to be a part of this project. And I mean, what's better than that? I mean, that's fantastic.
Welcome to the golf business. 13 and 14 were always the two. Well, the old 10th, which is now the 8th, is kind of a really long par 4 with an uphill second shot and kind of a punch bowl green that you see the flag on it, but you can't see any of the green surface way above you. That's not everybody's cup of tea. I think in the last 35 years, there's been a lot more attention to golf course architecture, and most people will recognize that as kind of a knockoff of the old Alps hole that McDonald built a lot and some other people have built. There's been more of that in the intervening years than what you saw in 1987. In 1987, that was way out there. I mean, it was something that looked like a golf course from the 20s, but that was not the style of stuff that was being built in the 80s. Now it kind of is again. The 13th green is one of the first greens I ever built and one of the wildest. But everybody came to really love that, and it's just a very different piece of this golf course. So I was really glad we were able to preserve that. The worst hole on the golf course by far originally was the old 18th hole, a par 5 that people hit their second shot in the lake a lot. The lines that the DNR gave me to work around were a little more tougher than I expected. And it was too late to change my mind on the hole I was building back then, so we were just kind of stuck with it. But this time it was like, okay, that hole can't be the same. We've got to do something different with that hole. We're still using the ground, but we got to use it in a different way. So now you come off the back of the 15th green, and the tee is most of the way down the hill right there. But that second shot that was so hard I've got is the tee shot now. So you have more control of that, and you can put people on the right tee where they can hit that shot and not get wet all the time. And then it turns and goes up the hill behind the 8th tee here, which is, you know, much further up the hill than it used to. But so it's not an easy hole, but it's, you know, it's manageable. You don't feel like you're going to lose a ball and not finish the hole. The new holes on the other side, I'm curious. You know, the one that I have been the most curious about since I routed it way back when is what's now number 7, a really short par 4, kind of like hilltop to hilltop with a big valley in between and a couple of bunkers on the approach. And it's like, you know, some people will just be trying to smash it at the green there, but if you're not, it's going to take a few plays to figure out where is the best place for me to go and get a good look at the approach shot and have some control over it, because the green is not very big and it falls off pretty hard to the left. And then, you know, the other hole that I know people will be interested in because it's really different. When we got, you know, 2 of the par 3s are inherited from the old golf course, and they were both kind of 150 to 170 yards. And then one of the new par 3s, the 6th hole, is about 180 or 190. So, you know, when it came to the last one, number 3, we didn't have a really short par 3 and we didn't have a really long par 3. And I asked Rod which one would he rather I do, and he said, "Oh, I'd like to have a short par 3 that's really tough." It's hard to build a short par 3 that's tough because you really want to build a small green, and superintendents don't want to build a small green anymore. You know, they want to be able to move the pin around. They want to have plenty of space to move the pin around and make sure one spot doesn't get too worn out. So when I ask a superintendent, you know, what's the minimum size of a green I can do, they'll say 5,000 square feet. And that's, you know, that's not a small green. That's from 130 yards, that's not frightening at all. So after thinking about this 3rd hole for a while, I thought, I did it once at Pacific Dunes for different reasons, but I saw Tom Fazio do it a few times back in the day. To build a small green, he built a hole with 2 greens. And if you build a hole with 2 greens and you're not using this one every time, you can afford to make that smaller. So that's what we did for number 3. We built a green at 130 yards that's about a 3,500 square foot green with a lot of trouble around it, and it's going to be a scary little hole. We also built a green at like 230 yards over the ridge, you know, falling away a little bit at the back. That's going to be a hard hole just because it's a long par 3. I think if the members play twice a day or come up for 2 or 3 days, they'll play both of them some of the time. Exactly how we'll work it out for daily setup, I'm not sure yet. We've talked a little about it, whether we keep flags in both holes all the time. I think you probably will. The group can choose, now we did that one already, let's do the other one. Or, no, we're gonna set the course record, so we gotta play the long one today. Half the people playing for the potential course record would be like, oh no, now I gotta play from here.
That long one's no bargain either.
No, that's a hard hole to the back green. It's not a real big green either, and it's, you know, it doesn't have a lot of bunkers around it, but it's a long shot for that kind of hole.